Knock, knock. Who's on first?
In comics, we see a colorful cast of characters. From the stalwart hero, to the brooding anti-hero, to the scheming villain. But in this video, we're gonna take a look at one character who's a bit of a creep. Let's talk about DC's The Creeper. Let's get to it.
If you watch the new Batman Adventures, you probably remember one of the strangest characters the show ever introduced. A screaming, yellow-skinned maniac who laughed even harder than the Joker, and who also wouldn't stop chasing Harley Quinn. Yes, I'm talking about the Creeper. Long before many comic fans dug into his chaotic comic book history, most people first met the Creeper in the new Batman Adventures, where he appeared as a hyperactive, cackling anti-hero who developed a bizarre crush on Harley Quinn. He followed her around, flirted with her mid-fight, and somehow managed to be so unhinged that even the Joker wanted Batman to deal with him. But that animated appearance was only scratching the surface. Before he had his life turned upside down, we were familiar with Jack Ryder, a seemingly brash journalist who made his living by making other people miserable on television. The character first appeared in the pages of DC's Showcase issue 73 way back in 1968, and since then, his origin has been revised several times. He was the guy who asked the uncomfortable questions, and definitely the one who didn't care about sponsors or ratings or even basic human decency when there was a story he was assigned to chase. But one thing led to another, and so on and so forth, and his identity became what we fans better know him as. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, here in this video today, we have an accident of a character who has been through it all. I'm talking about escaping from a whole lot of near-death scenarios, regenerating from literal scraps, and even convincing everyone that he's both completely insane whilst posing as a hero. So, with all of the hype built, allow me to properly introduce you to the entire life of the Creeper. Let's get to it. Here we go. Birth of Madness. Jack Ryder's transformations. Jack Ryder grew up having a quiet childhood. His dad was a reporter himself, and one who was never really around, as he was always chasing stories, which often left a young Jack with a mom who was herself struggling with paranoid schizophrenia. When Jack got a bit too hard to control at times, she would threaten him with a boogeyman called the Creeper. Yeah, you heard that right. But anyway, years passed, and his mom eventually ended up in an institution and died there around the time Jack turned 14. This left him with a whole lot of trauma to deal with, but it gave rise to this compulsion within him to become a truth-seeking journalist, just like his usually absent dad. Now, when he became an adult, he was already a television reporter in Gotham City, and he was pretty good at his job. Not that good when it comes to getting a great deal of respect from peers and colleagues, though. However, he was rock solid as a journalist, whom people would tune in for, just to see who he would piss off with his questions. Jack Ryder had this peculiar way of being an aggressive journalist who would bring guests on his show and often antagonize them. He has pressed many on concerning issues like stem cell research and medical nanotechnology, and this on-air conflict always got the network ratings. But while he was erratic, he was also secretly terrified of becoming as unstable as his mother. So, as a result, he burdened himself with work, with the hope that this line of defense would calm, or at least justify where his head was. But, spoiler alert, it didn't. And here is where things get a little too complicated. The classic 1968 origin. In his very first appearance in Showcase, issue number 73, Steve Ditko and Don Segal, the great minds behind this character, introduced us to a certain Jack Ryder, who was investigating the kidnapping of a communist scientist. Back to the story now, and so Ryder found himself crashing a costume party to get close to the action, and threw together a last-minute costume from whatever he could grab at a rental shop. And as a result, he stumbled into a whole mess. He finally got Dr. Vincent Yachts, the scientist he was looking for, who had developed some kind of super serum. But when mobsters reached there and started attacking, Jack got stabbed and was severely injured. But guess who rescues him? It was Dr. Yachts, who injected him with the same serum to keep him away from the bad guys. However, those mobsters still ended up shooting Ryder, and in the head too at that. Thankfully, Jack didn't die. This was also partially due to the serum that gave him a boost of strength, agility, and healing. Now, Yachts also had implanted a weird matter transmuter device in Jack's arm, which allowed him to switch in and out of his costume. As a result, Jack could just snap into his creeper gear whenever he wanted. The best part about this origin story is that in this version, the insanity is completely an act. Here, Jack Ryder is a perfectly sane man who just figured that acting like a maniac would freak out the criminals, and that would just give him an advantage over them. He was basically method acting his way into fighting crime, and therefore, the thought process was followed by the cackling, the twitching, the wild movements. Sure, everything was theatrical, but it was effective. The post-crisis origin. Now, on to the after-crisis on Infinite Earths, which shook everything up. Here is where the Creeper got a much darker twist to his character. This time, Jack was investigating a mob boss at a masquerade party, but he was captured. He is beaten, and then injected with hallucinogenic drugs. Then they shoot him and leave him for dead. But Dr. Yachts comes right in to find him there, and decides to save his life by planting a similar matter transmuter device as the one from the classic origin story. But here's what is different about this version. Because Jack was tripping on hallucinogens when the device was implanted, every time he transformed into the Creeper, those same drugs re-entered his system. So now, the Creeper is genuinely a psychotic character. Eventually, Jack started believing that he and the Creeper were two separate people. And honestly, you kinda understand why he would say that, right? The modern nanocell origin. On to another origin story, and this one takes us to the mid-2000s, where they tried again. This time we meet Dr. Yachts, and here he seems to be the one who has developed the revolutionary nanocells, which are said to be capable of regenerating tissues and healing almost everything. Jack was investigating Yachts' work, but once again, mobsters came in and attacked him, and so Yachts injected him with the nanotech, and you can guess the following incident. Jack got shot in the head, but the nanotech brought him to life and transformed him into the Creeper at will. But this version leaned much more into the regeneration angle, which made Jack pretty much unkillable. This version also introduced the idea that the Joker's toxin was somehow connected to the formula, which was later explained as to why the Creeper looked like a colorful cousin of the Joker. The supernatural origin. Now, since the same old origin story exhausted the minds behind this one, they decided that the Creeper might actually be a demon. Yeah, talk about a shift. So, during the Reign in Hell storyline, it was revealed that the Creeper was some kind of creature who had spawned from hell, and that Jack Ryder was just his unwilling host. This turned such a well-known comic book character into something so awkward and forgettable that even the writers couldn't follow up with such a premise for too long. Nevertheless, looking at the larger picture, all of these origins actually work for the Creeper in one way or another, mainly because the character's whole deal is his instability and chaos. So, having a backstory that changes every decade is a thought-out choice of the different creators. The Creeper can blend into whatever the story needs him to be. All in all, what matters is the result, which is that Jack Ryder can transform into the Creeper. His early run saw his first major villain in the form of a character called Proteus, who was a shapeshifter and was basically the chameleon of the DC universe, and their battles defined the Creeper's initial years. And then who could forget the role of Batman during this time? The Dark Knight came across the Creeper early on, and their team-ups were always interesting, for lack of a better word. Batman doesn't do well with chaos in the first place, and the fact that the Creeper is chaos personified just made this duo quite unusual. But Bruce recognized the Creeper's potential and his genuine desire to help people, so much so that he even recommended the Creeper for Justice League membership. But the League wasn't so sure, and they just made him a reserve member as a result. Weaponized chaos, powers, style, and reputation. Okay, now allow me to talk about what the Creeper can actually do after going through the different kinds of aforementioned transformations. First off, we have to start with the supernatural strength of this guy. The Creeper can actually send grown men flying across rooms with a single punch. In the comics, he's been shown as someone who tosses around criminals like ragdolls, and he did so with such ease, as if he was simply swatting flies. Then there's his agility, which has him moving like a deranged animal. The Creeper can climb walls, leap between buildings, and perform insane feats, which subtly show off this specific ability of his. In some comic sequences, he is shown to have bounced off walls, ceilings, and even criminals, and these were very well liked by the fans, who saw this as a peculiarity for the character. The unpredictability, that is. And that even defines his fighting style, where one minute he's right in front of you, but the next he's on your back, simply cackling while you try to anticipate his next move, but won't be able to. His healing abilities have also had a huge impact on the Creeper, as he can heal from pretty much any wound. Gunshots are healed in minutes, and stab wounds vanish, just like that. Consider the regeneration skills of Wolverine in him. But the crazy part is yet to come. The Creeper is someone who came back to life after literally being torn apart by hyenas. Yes, you heard that right. I'll go into the details behind that in the next section because I just can't leave y'all hanging at that, can I? Back to his powers now, and we have his laugh. Of course we do. This is his signature move, and it's exactly what it sounds like. When the creeper laughs, which is quite often, it is capable of physically hurting people. It is even said to be a real pain to the ears, as it causes a serious level of disorientation in its victims. Just imagine the most annoying laugh you've ever heard, but multiply it by 1,000 times. It'll probably cause your head some damage, which is what the creeper can do. Now, there are moments in the comics where thugs seem to be almost mesmerized by the creeper, sometimes being frozen in one place by this guy's absurdity. You may think it's mind control, but consider it more like when a yellow man with green hair is cackling at you and doing backflips off the walls, and your brain just kinda shuts off for a minute, which is exactly what it is like. Another important one from the animated series is when the creeper showed an almost supernatural awareness of his surroundings, where he could sense the master of stealth, Batman, coming up behind him as he reacted without even looking. Now, here's the thing about the creeper and his fighting style. It is designed to look and be terrifying. So while he may not fight like a traditional brawler or a martial arts fighter, he is surely one who can have the time of his life, while actively trying to give you a heart attack. He'll jump on your back and hang there like a backpack while laughing in your ear. He'll even bounce off walls at crazy angles that look physically impossible. He didn't dodge, nor did he take any cover. He just stood there laughing while the bullets hit him. He stumbled for half a second before closing in on the shooters. So, while he kept walking, the wounds were already closing up. By the time he reached them, they'd emptied all their bullets and were too scared to run. That's what the creeper experience is like. But all of these, in turn, seem to result in the creeper having an oddly built reputation among other heroes. Batman does respect his effectiveness, but also finds him exhausting. But with that said, here's the thing about the creeper. He shows up. However he may be, the creeper has helped save the world multiple times. And if he happens to do it while giggling and doing cartwheels through the apocalypse, what's the harm in that? His death, resurrection, and other major DC events. Well, the creeper has met his end a few times in different storylines, so let's have a look at some of the greatest hits. To start with, there's the Eclipso incident from the early 90s, where we had DC doing a major crossover event which featured Eclipso, who is this magical entity, almost considered as a pure manifestation of divine wrath. Take him to be an angel of vengeance of sorts. Once during a fight between him and the creeper, Eclipso tricked him into taking a certain black diamond, but that only turned out to be a ruse. Soon enough, he ended up possessing and capturing the creeper. But later on, after he was freed, the creeper joined a team that was much similar to the Suicide Squad called the Shadow Fighters, which was put together and led by none other than Amanda Waller, in order to take down Eclipso for the greater good. This lot then invaded the country of Parador, which Eclipso had conquered, and from that moment onwards, things would go on pretty well as most would expect. But then, in issue number 13 in the Eclipso series, released in 1993, had the creeper being hunted down by hyenas that were possessed by Eclipso. As I mentioned about this manner of death for the creeper earlier in the video, I reiterate that those hyenas tore the creeper apart. They literally ripped him into tiny pieces. Later, his remains were recovered by surviving team members, and that seemed to be the end of the creeper. Or was it? Because this is exactly when the creeper's healing factor kicked in, and as time passed by, those scattered pieces of him went on to regenerate into a whole new creeper by themselves. And he looked pretty good for someone who literally crawled out of his own grave. But you see, this abnormal feature made me wonder if the creeper can still be considered human or not, because surely mortal humans like you and I can't kill something that comes to life after being dismembered by hyenas, right? Now, on to another previously mentioned story titled Reign in Hell, which is set years later, during a time when DC did a storyline about literal hell. It started with a demon villain named Neuron, who called all the monsters home, and as a result, the creeper responded to it. At the time, Ryder was doing his TV show when he suddenly felt the call. This initially had him confused, but it was later revealed that the creeper might just be a demon after all, or at least a version of a demon, perhaps. In the same storyline, there was even a whole race of creatures similar to the creeper running around down there. I was so confused seeing it, and I'm glad many like me have forgotten it because, honestly, the creeper functions better as a mysterious presence than as a defined character. Well, other than these, there was also the alternate Flashpoint timeline. So you gotta feel sorry for the creeper here because even if their reasoning is funny, in their defense, they're absolutely right. Nevertheless, despite all the setbacks, and even the demise that I talked about, it is a fact that the creeper always comes back. He's been a part of the secret society of supervillains, then a member of the Outsiders, has teamed up with the Blue Devil and other heroes, and just generally toured around the DC universe. All of this is his legacy, even considering that he's never quite the same in his different appearance. But again, he's still always recognizable. You know the Creeper when you see him, without the need to explain much. Beyond Gotham, the Creeper in animation. Well, the Creeper doesn't restrict his adventures to just comic books, and if you wouldn't have happened to catch him there, then surely you might have spotted him in the classic New Batman Adventures series. So let's talk about it. Now, in the New Batman Adventures, we meet the Creeper, who was introduced to a whole generation. In the episode, Beware the Creeper, Jack Ryder is seen doing an expose on the Joker, and broadcasting it from the same spot where the Joker fell into chemicals many years ago. Something in me always knew that was a bad idea, because right then, the Joker shows up out of nowhere and ends up dousing everyone with laughing gas, before throwing Ryder into a chemical vat for what he calls a reenactment. Now, this combination of Joker venom and chemicals goes on to transform Jack Ryder into the Creeper. Here, his personality is often described as just like Joker's, but heroic. His shenanigans include bursting into a thrift store for the sake of finding a costume, but he just ends up paying for everything there. So, call him chaotic, but he's not a thief. But along the way, he does develop a very weird crush on Harley Quinn, and it's hilarious as well as quite uncomfortable for everyone involved in that subplot. But the Creeper has a kind of manic energy to him that fans have always loved. In one such instance, he interrogates the Joker's henchmen by being so weird that they just give up. And then he hits on Harley when she's trying to kill him. And don't forget that one hilarious scene where he was insanely hell-bent on chasing the Joker. So bad that even the Joker started begging Batman to save him for him. Then there was his appearance in Justice League Unlimited too. Here the Creeper shows up in the background of several episodes as a member of the Expanded League. He doesn't get lines, so even without any lines, the guy can stand out amongst the massive crew of superheroes. On to a more lighthearted series, Batman, the Brave and the Bold. The Creeper got a fantastic cameo. He single-handedly saves Batman from the villain Hellgramite and goes on to take down the villain, all while never stopping with his crazy commentary. Eventually, when the police shows up, he just runs away. But this is a perfect way to get a glimpse of the character, as he is effective but unusual, and gone before anyone has questions to ask him. All in all, I'd like to believe that the animated versions have been extremely important for the Creeper as a character because they've made him accessible. You finally didn't need 50 years of comic book stories and continuity to understand him. Along with that, his appeal in general was amazing among the fans, and also because such programs can allow themselves to be a bit more exaggerated, the Creeper really shines here, as the essence of the chaotic hero is pretty perfectly captured in his case. And that's our video for today. The legacy of the Creeper is fascinating precisely because he never steps into the role of a traditional main hero or villain, yet his story reveals an impressive range of experiences. Now, if you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, share the video with your friends, and let us know your thoughts on the Creeper down below in the comments section. Until next time, take care and ciao!